Hello, this is an introduction to AP seminar. This is the second lesson for this course. So previously I've talked about this entire page, the quest framework, lenses, perspectives, stakeholders. Then let me show you this. You must remember about credibility and reliability based on the kind of source we are using. And then I also spoke about the individual research report, developing a research question, an effective research question, right? What are the qualities of a question that you can truly thoroughly research in a given time frame? Then I also spoke about general tips about your team for performance tax 1. I know that is a lot, so today I'm talking about part 2 of Performance Tax 1. So, in the first lesson, I spoke about the quest framework and everything on this page, and then I spoke about the individual research report, rubric, and application. In this lesson, I will be talking about the Team Multimedia Presentation, and I'll show you a template of a real team multimedia presentation. Well, my presentation. So you know how to design your slides effectively as well. Before I jump into team multimedia presentation, I'll just be telling you about lenses, perspectives, and stakeholders once again. Lens is the tool that helps us organize our thinking. A lens is an approach to a theme. It contains many perspectives. Lenses include ethical, environmental, scientific, cultural and social, artistic and philosophical, historical and political, futuristic, economic, etc. Perspective is our actual thoughts about a topic. Stakeholders are individuals, groups, or organizations that have a vested interest in or are affected by the research topic. Okay, so now let's dive into the team multimedia presentation. Row 1 is about establishing your argument. 6 points. The presentation conveys the convincing argument for the team's solution or resolution through strategic selection of supporting evidence. Typical responses that earn 6 points. Present a clear, coherent, and complex argument for the team's solution. Make the logic of the argument clear through strategic selection of key claims and relevant supporting evidence. Contain only relevant material sufficient to successfully make the argument within the given time limit. Any repetition is effective. And I'll actually talk about this kind of repetition later on. Present a viable and convincing solution that is tightly connected to the argument and illustrates the complexity of the issue. Demonstrate mostly consistent logical connection among speakers. Row 2 is understand and analyze context. Evaluate solutions. 4 points. The presentation explains the pros and cons of potential options and situates the team's proposed solution in conversation with them. And the presentation evaluates the solution proposed by the team by thoroughly explaining its limitations or implications. Typical responses that earn 4 points fully meet both rubric criteria. Now let's go to row 3. Engage audience or your performance, your stage presence. 6 points. All presenters effectively engage the audience through strategic intentional use of performance techniques most of the time. Typical responses that earn 6 points have all presenters use strategies to effectively engage the audience most of the time. Scoring note: there may be minor lapses at this level, but they do not distract from the overall impression of an engaging presentation. So, now let's talk more about performance techniques that are not helpful versus those that are extremely helpful. Well, performance techniques that do not engage the audience include lack of eye contact with audience, staring at slides, at note cards, into space, or at the floor, lack of vocal variety, monotone, or mumbling. Rate of speech is too fast to be comprehensible or too slow to maintain interest. Being distracted by presenter support materials, note cards, slides, or teleprompters. Reciting from memory or teleprompter in a way that compromises connection with the audience as if not talking to actual people. Lack of energy, seem bored by the project. Movement that is distracting, fidgeting, swaying, slumping, excessive hand movements for no strategic purpose, or complete lack of movement. Now, what are the effective performance techniques that do engage the audience? Well, eye contact with audience, vocal variety is used to emphasize important information, volume, pause, rhetorical question. Effective rate of speech, controlled, well paced, not rushed, or overly dense with information. Use of presenter support materials, note cards, slides, or teleprompters does not compromise connection to the audience. Effectively incorporates into the presentation supporting materials, visuals, slides, handouts, posters. Energy is present. You seem interested in the project. And then movement. Gestures serve to emphasize key points. All right. And something additional I would like to say is make sure that you actually practice with your team. So you can, of course, do Zoom sessions, Google Meets if you have to for your practice presentations, but at least practice once or twice in person when you're actually seeing everyone's energy, proper hand gestures, proper eye contact, and then you can actually assess the vocal variety better because sometimes Zoom sessions don't actually give you the best sense of what your team members' volume or vocal variety is like because technical issues or the audio might not be optimal for you technologically speaking. So you want to actually be in person to make sure that everyone has the right kind of flow together and the right kind of performance techniques. Of course, this is highly encouraged. Actually, you should do this. All right, let's just make this mandatory. For example, if your team member brings up an awesome point about XYZ, you should jump in and say, I agree with my team member A to add on CDE, right? You get the point. You want to say to add on to, then say your team member's name, then say to add on to A's point, to add on to B's implications, right? So that is a great way to have that flow and connection. Now let's talk about engaging audience through your design. So this is row 4. It's all about your slides presentation now itself. 4 points. Overall, the design clearly guides viewers through the presentation and demonstrates a strategic selection of media and design elements that help clarify the argument for the team's solution. Typical responses that earn 4 points. Provide visuals that overall serve a clear purpose in organizing or advancing the team argument, such as signposting and emphasis. Include well chosen words and images throughout to highlight key points or information. Present visuals that contain little clutter or visual noise. They enhance rather than compete with the speaker's message. There are no extraneous images or data dumps. You do not want random images and whole bunch of data on your slides that really serve no poor purpose or are really hard to interpret, because you want the audience, the teachers, to look at you, not be reading off the slides eventually, right? So do not have everything on your slides like that. Make your slides concise with the bullet points, with relevant images and relevant data. Of course, your slides must have in-text citations and straightforward headings. You want to create cohesion through consistency of design across the team throughout. Now let's look at row 5. Collaborate and reflect. 4 points. All responses in the oral defense articulate detailed answers to the question asked and support those answers with relevant evidence specific to collaboration on this project. And the answers in the oral defense taken together with the presentation demonstrate roughly equal participation from all team members. Typical responses that earn 4 points have all presenters provide specific and relevant evidence about the team's collaborative work and answer the question posed. So row 5 is all about the oral defense. Okay, so the TMP will be between 8 to 10 minutes in length, all right? So your presentation has a time limit between 8 to 10 minutes. After that, nothing else will be scored by College Board, and the teachers will ask you the oral defense questions. Here are some sample oral defense questions. 1. Student A. How did the group decide to include student B's perspective, lens, conclusions into the overall presentation? Student A. Give one specific way that your thinking changed as a result of learning about student B's findings. 3. Reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem your group identified? 4. What is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' individual reports that you decided to exclude from your team presentation, and why? Number 5. What is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research? Number 6. Describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion. Number 7. If you had another team member, what other perspectives or limitations could they have researched that would have made a useful contribution to the project? So, when you're looking at the sample oral defense questions, you should automatically now realize not only should you master your topic or whatever you researched, but you should be 100% familiar with each other's. You should be familiar with all of your team members' research as well, so that if you're asked about student A or B, you are able to answer about student A or B and not C, right? You want to make sure you actually know about each other's topic in depth, which is why you don't want a team that isn't passionate about the topic, or you don't want a team that fools around. And you should be on task as well, because there will be checkpoints throughout this entire course that your teacher will be doing and is mandated to do. So let's look at a sample my AP seminar presentation slides. So first slide, I have a picture of this man in orange suit and Max looking at all this garbage around him. You're highly recommended to start like this. So this picture was meant to capture the audience attention immediately at all the garbage and evoke a sense of imagery and serve as a short story that set the stage. So my team member began by saying, imagine you are going to school and you see this kind of garbage all around you, etc. Right? So having an image like this first already captures attention, already evokes imagery, and helps you set the stage by saying that quick story. Then my team members and I put the title of our main presentation: Effects of US Municipal Waste on Public Health. And you can see that names were written, but I removed for confidentiality purposes. And then we also had some nice design elements, right? You see the recycle, reduce, reuse symbol to the left bottom corner. To the right bottom corner, you see the picture of Earth, a stethoscope, hurt, people to represent public health. So these design elements were very purposeful and very minimal too. So nothing is overwhelming you on this slide. Then my team members and I decided, since we're talking a lot about municipal waste, this is a term teachers and audience will hear all throughout the presentation, it's important that we actually define what is municipal waste. So you can see we have straightforward bullet points, we have an image that supports our bullet points, so everything's very purposeful on the slide, and nothing is overwhelming here. There is no visual clutters. Then we have statistics. Of course, you see the in-text citation right there as well. And these statistics serve to emphasize the prevalence of municipal waste and what a big issue it is in the United States. Then we jumped into our research question. So we didn't have our research question from the beginning, but we got to the point through a compelling story, the definition, and statistics. So if you like our format, by all means, go for it. Start with a story, then flow into the title, then have the definition if you have a term that is extremely important and will be repeated all throughout. Then you can have statistics. Afterwards, presenting a research question would be perfect because now is a perfect time for everyone to truly listen to what will be the problem that we explore in depth. So, our research question was, to what extent does US municipal waste management impact public health in densely populated areas? So this is a format that really helped me. So not only did I have this formatted kind of question for my team multimedia presentation, but I also used this format for my individual multimedia presentation. The format basically, to what extent does X impact Y? Okay, so I believe this is a very powerful format that if you need this, by all means, go for it. To what extent does X impact Y? And if you need to be more specific, then say, to what extent does X impact Y in region? So then be more specific about the region, right? So that's a format that had worked for me all throughout the AP seminar course. Then my team member went into the economics of municipal waste. Well, I just have a box because I think it's best for me to hide some things. You don't need to see all the information if you appear to be interested in this topic. So anyway, so there's bullet points on the economics of municipal waste, and look at the heading. It's very straightforward that we are looking at the economic lens. So when it comes to introducing what lens you're diving into, just be direct in the heading. Don't make the audience guess. Don't make anyone guess anything. Just directly say economic lens of something or social cultural lens of something, political, historical, etc. So this is a figure that was purposely chosen. There's no clutter once again, and you see the in-text citation right there. Then we went into the scientific and medical lens. So have a look at that heading once again. Very clear about what lenses we're looking at. And then you see the claim or the perspective through that lens. So living near municipal solid waste sites increases the risk of adverse birth outcomes. So that this was my part. So once again, this is in action. Scientific is the lens. And then this claim right here is my perspective that I present through the scientific lens. I hope this makes lenses and perspectives extremely clear. Then I showed this a graph. I have the in-text citation, and I also boxed what I want to highlight or what I want to pop out in red. Then you can already imagine my format, pretty much the same. All right, in this slide, my team members mentioned two different kinds of possible solutions. So waste to energy plants and monitoring landfills, and directly labeled pros and cons. After we talked about these two possible solutions, we talked about a final solution in the social lens, right? Zero waste initiatives. And we have very clear, straightforward bullet points and a very great supporting image. But then we directly stated the limitations of zero waste initiatives, the education that's required, the commitment that's required from individuals and businesses. So, this is where we dive into stakeholders. So, in this case, individuals are the common people, the public, and businesses. That's another stakeholder. They can be impacted by or affect the topic. They can affect how well municipal waste management is. So you see that vested interest that I was talking about right earlier when I was talking about lenses, perspectives, and stakeholders and their definitions. Once again, we have a supportive image. Then I explained why our solution could still work despite the limitations. And this is where the repeating emphasis comes, all right? So remember in the rubric, we're looking at any repetition is effective. So this is how effective repetition looks like. So first, we talked about zero waste initiatives. Then we talked about the limitations of this final solution we think is the most um, effective and optimal. And then I'm going back to emphasize despite the limitations, our solution still works, right? So this is effective repetition. The main repetition here is proving how our final solution is the best solution out of whatever we looked at. And then we directly titled, why are we arguing this topic? What is its relevance in today's society? What are the implications? Once again, very straightforward bullet points right here. Then My team member ended with a very powerful quote from Nelson Mandela. You can start changing our world for the better daily, no matter how small the action. So that gave us a very powerful close. So you see how we began with a story and we ended with this powerful quote to wrap up that story. So, yes, don't leave your story hanging, tie it back if you do decide to go this route. Then, here you can see the works cited page. And of course, in your individual research report, you have much more works cited, much more bigger reference page because you had to use even more sources. But remember, on the team multimedia presentation, you cannot use all the sources you want because everyone will have everyone will have 10, 12 sources. So you won't be able to incorporate all of that in a slide presentation. And that's why one of the questions for the oral defense could be that your teacher might ask you, oh, what did you decide to exclude and why, right? When you were looking at each other's research and so forth. So let's go back and look at another key highlight of my slides design. So in the bottom, you must have noticed problem, solutions, limitations, conclusion. So this is like a mini agenda box. It helps the audience, the teachers, to know exactly where we are at the presentation. So here the teacher knows you're talking about the problem. We're still talking about the problem in more details. And then now we're talking about solutions, right? Oh, now we're talking about limitations. Now we're going to the conclusion, implications, and wrapping up. So, whatever you see right now, and the color codes, the agenda box, I like to call it, I highly, highly recommend or even require that you do this. Right? Your teachers will be very impressed to see this kind of slides design. You saw nothing was overwhelming to the eyes, there was no clutter, and everything was easy to follow through. Now, I do think I could have had more visuals and maybe an extra slide with more bullet points on a place, maybe another country that was using the zero waste initiatives where it worked really well, right? That would have strengthened how this slides looked. But no worries. When we were presenting and talking, my team member gave a real world application of zero waste initiatives, etc. But it's just we didn't have an exact slide of that. So I think that's where I could have gone better, in addition to having a bit more visuals. So now that we looked at an excellent format, there's one more thing I want to say to you is one thing that's a myth, right? It's a myth if your teacher says have this much slides, number of slides. The number of slides you have actually doesn't matter. If you need more slides so that there isn't clutter on the slides, by all means, go for it. So I have 20 slides, but if needed, maybe you need 25, 30 slides, right? So that number of slides never mattered in real life. What matters is the content on every slide it needs to be relevant and it should not compete with you, right? You don't want too much on one slide at all. So if you need to spread out the number of slides, 100% do so. Now I'll just talk about an awesome citation generator that is attached to Google Docs. All right, you do not need to go to MyBib, check studies, citation generators that are oftentimes awful, right? Because the online citation generators sometimes they don't even put the correct author names. They they look at whoever wrote the comments and they think that's the authors, right? So instead of relying on external citation generators, you can use Google Docs citation generators. So how do you access it? Well, first go to Google Docs, then click on Tools right here. Next, click on Citations. Hooray! There you have it. We have MLA, APA, and Chicago. Remember, if you want to go for MLA, all of the citations must be MLA. If you want to go for APA, all the citations have to be APA. If you're going for Chicago, all the citations must be Chicago, right? So whatever kind of citation style you choose, just stick to it and be consistent. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson on the Multimedia Presentation. I hope you enjoyed looking at the rubric, the oral defense questions, my real presentation, so you can see how to format your slides, and last but not least, the citations generator. I hope to see you on the next lesson and have a great day.